How to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program and get funded before time runs out. If you own a small business with any amount of employees, if you work for yourself as a gig worker, whether that be an independent contractor of any kind, a gig worker like an Uber driver, Instacart driver, any kind of 1099 service, you absolutely need to apply as soon as possible in order to increase the likelihood that you get funding, because funding will not last forever. It will run out sooner than you know it, and there are processing times on these applications. So I'm putting this out as kind of like a last-ditch effort. I've been doing the absolute most to make sure that everyone who can get this program legally, we're not talking about the fraudsters here, everyone who can get it legally, I've made it my life's mission to make sure that you apply, and this is kind of your last chance where it sits right now. So we're going to talk about the timeline left for this program and the top 3 companies who are still processing these loans, as well as the pros and the cons of each of these top 3 companies and who comes out the very tippy top here. So with funding, the Paycheck Protection Program lasts until May 31st. That is the last day that you can possibly apply for this program, but you do not want to consider that the deadline, because odds are funding will run out much sooner than that. Now, the projection has extended a little bit further than we had thought, because about a month ago, we thought that funding would already be run out, and then about a week ago, we were told that funding should last until around mid-May, and then I did some calculations just recently, and I think it might last a little bit longer than mid-May, but odds are funding will run out before May 31st. So don't consider that the deadline. I would consider today the deadline. Like, you need to apply as soon as possible. Where we're sitting right now, there is a chance that more funding may be added, but that is uncertain, and we probably won't know for about 2 weeks to see exactly how fast funding runs out and how many businesses are left in the cold without funding. If there's tens of thousands of businesses left with no funding, chances are Congress will add more funding, but we simply don't know. That's not a guarantee. Where it sits, there are no bills proposed. There's no bill on the House floor. There's no bill on the Senate floor yet to increase funding. There is a bill to increase retroactively PPP loans that were based on net income to gross income, but even that doesn't include any funding. And there also is a grassroots program that has been going on in order to help get our local Congress people to push for more funding here. But again, no action has actually happened, so we cannot bank on it. If I had to guess, I would say the odds are more likely than not that additional funding happens, especially if there are businesses who are left in the dry. But again, we just don't know. So now let's talk about the 3 top lenders who are still processing loans and the pros and the cons of each of these. Now, if you haven't applied yet, make sure you watch through the entire rest of the video. That way you understand which lender is most suitable for you and which one is the best, in my opinion, taking all the factors into account, because I have personally helped hundreds of thousands of businesses get Paycheck Protection Program funding. So popping into this chart that I made, the 3 top lenders that are still approving loans, in my opinion, are Womply, BlueAcorn, and Amur. Now, you may not have heard of some of these, so let's go into the details. We're going to start here with BlueAcorn. BlueAcorn has been pretty popular in the recent weeks, but they all have their pros and their cons. So let's start off with the pros here. They have fast approval times if there are no issues on your application. If there are issues on your application, approval times increase dramatically. And really, this is the case for absolutely everyone. Now, some lenders are just not that fast about approvals in general. Some are just fast in general, but there's a consensus that if there's any issue on your application, you can expect weeks added, potentially months added to your processing time in order to get funding. So this is a really important point to note, that when you're doing an application through anyone, make sure all of your information is 100% correct. They are still accepting applications. Now, many large banks are not still accepting applications. BlueAcorn is. In fact, all these 3 lenders are. That's why I'm talking about them. Easier application than most. This is especially when we compare this to basically any large bank. Their application is much easier than most. And if we go to their cons here, BlueAcorn cons, they have mixed reviews. Now, I say this because I have heard glowing reviews and I have heard terrible reviews on a pretty consistent basis for each. So it's kind of tricky when you hear a whole lot of good and a whole lot of bad, so I wanted to point that out. Next, they have processed a lot of fraud. There are so many fraudulent Paycheck Protection applications and people actually receiving funding fraudulently through these programs, and it seems BlueAcorn is kind of the one who is processing a lot of this. When I was doing my digging on fake PPP loans, a lot of people were getting approvals from BlueAcorn. Now you might be thinking, well, if they're approving fake people, that probably means it's easier to apply. And I think it's probably actually the opposite at this point. Because there was so much fraud going through it, I think it's actually probably a little bit harder to get approved because of the fraudsters and because maybe their systems weren't up to par or something like that. There was some reason why people were going to them. I don't want to guess why one way or another. Next, I've read reports that you have to wait the 8+ weeks time after your covered period to apply for round 2 applications. And this isn't the case for the other 2 lenders on this list. So I wanted to point that out. If you're going for 2 draws, I have heard and read multiple times that you have to wait the 8 weeks. And then sometimes people say that they reach out to support and support says you can't even get round 2. So it's even kind of mixed there. That's something important to note, that if you're aiming for a round 2, maybe that isn't the best lender to go with. And the next, it's very hard to reach customer support, very hard to reach customer support with them. And that's really just as they scale because they've gotten quite popular. Next, let's talk about Amur. This is a very small company, actually, so you may not have heard of them before. Now, their biggest pro, in my opinion, is they have the best customer service of all 3 on this list. Now, the other 2 on this list had good customer service until they got so popular, and then they just had millions of applications and their customer service went down. And that's just kind of what happens. So this is a smaller company and they have the best customer service of these 3. However, it's unfortunately still not as good as it used to be because now they are getting more and more popular. So it's like no one has amazing customer service at this point, but they're probably still the best. But it might be getting worse by the day. Also, they accept round 1 and round 2 funding with less than 8 weeks in between. You don't have to worry about the covered period. You can get round 1 funding. As soon as that's coded at the SBA, you can get round 2 funding. So that's a great benefit of them. They are also the best at fixing issues, in my opinion. Because they're smaller, they have a little bit more access at actually fixing issues on your PPP application. But this is another one of those things that now that they're a little bit more popular, they're not going to be as good at fixing issues as they once were, and the timeline is running out, so they don't have as much time to fix these issues. Now, they do have some cons as well. They have the hardest application of the 3 that we're talking about today. It takes the most amount of time, and you need to provide the most amount of documentation. I went through their application process just kind of as a test run to see how it went, and yeah, it takes 4 or 5 times longer than the other 2 on this list. It's not impossible, but it's worth bringing up. Also, they are overwhelmed. Like I said, they're getting more popular, and this has kind of hurt their customer service and the approval times that they were really good at a little while back. Now let's talk about Womply. And we'll start with their pros. Their first pro here I want to talk about, they've processed more loans than anyone. They have approved more loans than anyone. So they have the track record to say like, hey, we've done the most. Especially, they've probably done more than the other 2 on this list combined, and more just lenders in general combined. Next, they have the easiest application. By far, in my opinion, their Fastlane application, if you have a 1040 Schedule C, it literally can take 5 minutes to go through this entire application. Super easy, super streamlined for most people. Some people run into some glitches, but most of those glitches have been worked out at this point. Fastest approval time, if there's no issues on your application. If there's no issues whatsoever, it seems like people are actually getting funding between 7 and 10 days from applying. I personally know people who have applied and received funding in 7 days using their application. However, if there's any issue on your application, it could take several weeks more to several months more to who knows, because it's still processing. And this is kind of an unfortunate thing because sometimes we don't know what is causing these issues. Other times it could be mistakes on the application, but it's fairly opaque and can be frustrating for the group of people that don't get funding super quickly. So it's kind of like 80%, 90% of people seem to get funding super easily with no issues, and then 10 to 20% run into issues and either see some delays or they don't know exactly where they stand. Next, you can apply back-to-back round 1 and round 2. So they have an application that allows you to apply for both round 1 and round 2. You receive round 1 funding, and then about a week or 2 later, you'll apply for round 2 by just signing the application. They'll submit it as soon as it's coded at the SBA. It's the easiest back-to-back round 1, round 2 application out of anyone. There's a reason why they're the most popular. They're also the fastest to make changes. Every single change that has happened with the Paycheck Protection Program in the past, they were the first ones to update their application. And then, of course, every time they update their application, there's some kind of glitch and then people get mad. But they are the fastest to make these things happen, so we have to give them some kudos for that. Also, the most information is out about them because they're the most popular. any error that you're running into, they have the most information, where the other lenders aren't quite as popular. So if you look up forums and stuff like that, there's not quite as many people talking about it. Like for instance, I have a Discord channel, which I'll link down in the description, of about 2,000 people who have applied with Womply and know most of the answers to any question that you could possibly have on the application process. But of course, they have cons as well. It's very hard to reach customer support. It seems like this has gotten better in the recent past. Some people are saying that they're able to get through, but we still have to say it's very hard to reach them. They have application glitches. Most of the time, it seems like there'll be an application glitch for about 3 to 5 days, and then it's fixed and it's not really an issue anymore. But we're dealing with brand new software and there's glitches, and that's really is the case for all of the lenders on this list as well. And it's very hard to fix SBA issues or other issues. This is another thing with how popular they are and how hard it is to fix anything on the SBA end. If there's any issues, they are extremely hard to fix. So taking all things into consideration, I still believe that Womply is the best as far as processing time and getting the most loans funded. They have the total average score that is best, but there still is the issue that there is no perfect PPP processor. There's no one who is a 10 out of 10 because these systems are brand new, they're extremely confusing, and it's very hard on the SBA end to deal with any issues and the time constraints left with this program. Amur may be a good choice if you have an extremely complicated application that you need some additional support, but again, they've become more popular, so it's hard to say exactly how easy that will be to get through to support at this time. I'll have the links for all 3 of those lenders in the description of this video, and if you happen to go with Womply, I have a step-by-step walkthrough of their application, which I will link above if you want to have the application up and fill it out at the exact same time. That way I can help kind of answer questions as you go through it. And also, after you're done applying through any one of these lenders for the Paycheck Protection Program, make sure you check out my channel for PPP forgiveness. That way you can understand everything you need to do on that end as well. I hope that this video was illuminating. I think it's important to put this out there when the funding timeline is running out. Just go and apply ASAP. I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.